Picture this. If Walmart were a country, its annual revenue would outrank the entire GDP of Sweden, or Belgium, or Ireland. Not its stock market value, its actual yearly sales. One retailer moving more money in 12 months than most nations produce in an entire year. And yet, ask the average investor to name the most powerful company in America, and you'll hear Apple, Tesla, maybe Nvidia. Walmart barely makes the list because Walmart doesn't feel exciting. No sleek product launches. No billionaire founder tweeting at 2 a.m. Just fluorescent lights, rollback signs, and parking lots the size of small towns. But here's the paradox that should stop you cold. Walmart operates on a profit margin so thin it's almost embarrassing, often under 3%. Compare that to a boutique retailer pocketing 20 cents on every dollar. And on paper, Walmart looks like the worst business. So how does a company barely squeezing out pennies per dollar become one of the most dominant economic forces on the planet? Bigger than most banks, most tech giants, most governments' entire budgets? The answer isn't luck. It isn't even really about cheap prices, despite what the slogans tell you. It's a math problem, one most people, including most investors, have never actually seen solved. And once you see it, you'll never look at a boring business the same way again. Ask most people why Walmart is cheap, and you'll get the same answer every time. They just sell things for less. Case closed, right? Wrong. That explanation is like saying a marathon runner wins because they run fast. True, but it explains nothing about how Walmart's slogan, "everyday low prices," sounds like marketing fluff. It's not. It's actually a precise operational philosophy, one that reshaped how modern retail functions. Here's what almost nobody sees. Walmart doesn't just cut prices and hope for the best. It builds an entire system engineered so that low prices are the output, not the strategy itself. Think about your last trip to a Walmart, or even a Target or Costco copying the same playbook. You probably didn't notice the invisible machinery behind that $4 bottle of detergent, the real-time inventory tracking system pinging warehouses. The second a shelf runs low, the direct relationships with manufacturers that cut out middlemen entirely, the massive data operation predicting exactly how many umbrellas a specific store in Ohio will need next Tuesday based on weather forecasts. This is the part that trips up even smart shoppers and casual investors alike. They assume Walmart's advantage is pricing. It's not. Pricing is the visible symptom. The real advantage is information and logistics. Knowing exactly what to stock, when, and at what cost, faster and cheaper than literally anyone else on Earth. Most people never see this machinery because it's designed to be invisible. You're not supposed to notice the supply chain. You're just supposed to notice the price tag and think, wow, that's cheap. But here's where it gets genuinely fascinating, and where most explanations of Walmart completely fall apart. If cheap prices were the whole story, a small no-frills store with bare-bones service should be able to outprice Walmart easily. They don't need fancy trucks or corporate headquarters. So why can't they compete? Why does Walmart's math work when a scrappy dollar store's often doesn't? The answer lives in a single number most business articles skip entirely, and it's about to change how you see every cheap business you've ever walked into. Section 3. The margin math. Walmart versus a boutique retailer. Let's put two business owners side by side. Call them Dana and Marcus. Dana opens a boutique home goods store. Beautiful lighting, curated products, the kind of place where a candle costs $34 and somehow feels worth it. Marcus, meanwhile, opens a no-frills discount store 2 miles away. Plain shelves, fluorescent lighting, prices slashed to the bone. Donna marks up her products aggressively. That $34 candle cost her $14 to source. She's pocketing a 20% net margin after expenses. Genuinely excellent for retail. Marcus, on the other hand, prices everything barely above cost. His net margin, a brutal 2.5%. On paper, Dana is crushing it. Marcus looks like he's barely surviving. Now fast forward 5 years. Dana sells 3,000 candles a year. Her total profit, roughly $20,000 annually. Respectable for a boutique, but capped by how many customers walk through her door and how much they're willing to spend on a candle. Marcus, though, sells 400,000 units a year across every category imaginable, because his prices pull in customers from 6 zip codes, not just the neighborhood. Even at that razor-thin 2.5% margin, his sheer volume generates profit numbers Dana can't touch. He's not making more money per item. He's making dramatically more money per day because volume, not markup, is doing the heavy lifting. This is the exact mechanism Walmart mastered at a planetary scale. A 2.5% margin sounds embarrassing until you remember Walmart moves over $650 billion worth of goods every single year. Suddenly, that embarrassing margin generates roughly $19 billion in annual profit. Dana's model doesn't scale past her local market. Marcus's model, Walmart's model, scales with population, geography, and sheer transaction volume. Here's the part most retail analysis completely misses. Low margin isn't a weakness to apologize for. It's a moat. A 20% margin invites competitors. Everyone wants a piece of that fat profit. A 2.5% margin scares almost everyone away, because most companies can't survive on it. Walmart isn't just tolerating thin margins. It's using them as a weapon competitors can't replicate without the volume to back it up. But volume alone doesn't just appear out of thin air. Selling 400,000 units a year isn't a marketing trick. It requires an entire invisible infrastructure working in the background, moving products faster and cheaper than anyone thought possible. And that infrastructure is where the real competitive advantage actually lives. Section 4. The supply chain superpower nobody sees follow a single t-shirt. Not a metaphor, an actual shirt, cotton grown in a field, destined for a shelf in Ohio. At most retailers, that shirt passes through a maze of middlemen. A manufacturer, a wholesaler, a regional distributor, maybe a broker negotiating shelf space. Every stop adds cost. Every handoff adds time. By the time that shirt reaches the store, its price has absorbed 5 different companies' profit margins before a customer ever touches it. Walmart looked at that maze and asked a simple, ruthless question: why are we paying for all these handoffs? So it built something almost no competitor could replicate: a direct pipeline from manufacturer to Walmart's own distribution centers, cutting out the wholesalers and brokers entirely. That t-shirt doesn't pass through 5 companies. It passes through one system, owned and optimized by Walmart itself, including a private trucking fleet so vast it functions like its own logistics company hiding inside a retailer. This is the part investors almost never model, and shoppers never think about. Walmart's real superpower isn't the store you walk into. It's the invisible network you never see. Regional distribution centers strategically placed, so no store is more than a day's drive away. Satellite-linked inventory systems that told corporate headquarters exactly what was selling in real time decades before big data became a buzzword. And supplier relationships so massive that Walmart can dictate terms most brands wouldn't dare refuse. Here's a number that reframes everything. Walmart is so large that for many suppliers it represents more than 10% of their entire company's revenue. Read that again. That's not a customer, that's leverage. When you're that critical to a supplier's survival, you don't negotiate prices, you set them. Compare that to Dana's boutique candle shop from earlier. She's at the mercy of her supplier's pricing, taking whatever wholesale cost she's quoted. Walmart, by contrast, often tells manufacturers what price it's willing to pay, and manufacturers, desperate for that volume, redesign their entire cost structure to make it work. This is why a scrappy discount store with low prices still can't compete with Walmart, even if they're willing to accept the same thin margins. Low prices without the logistics behind them just means bleeding money. Walmart's margin isn't thin because it's reckless. It's thin because the entire system beneath it was engineered, cost by cost, mile by mile, to make 2.5% wildly profitable at scale. But there's a cost this system doesn't erase, one that sparked decades of debate, boycotts, and congressional hearings. Because somewhere in this machine of trucks, warehouses, and negotiated supplier terms, there are also people, millions of them. And the question of what they're paid and what they're owed is where this story gets a lot less comfortable. Section 5. The employee equation: wages, automation, and the real cost debate. Here's a number that stops most people mid-scroll. Walmart employs over 1.6 million people in the United States alone. That's more than the entire population of Philadelphia, all working under one corporate roof. Which means whatever Walmart decides about wages doesn't just affect a company. It ripples through entire local economies. For years, the criticism has been loud and consistent. Walmart's wages sit near the bottom of the retail industry, and in many towns, it's the only major employer, meaning it doesn't have to compete hard for workers. Critics point to public assistance data showing many Walmart employees historically qualified for food stamps or Medicaid. Essentially, the argument goes, taxpayers subsidize the gap between what Walmart pays and what a full-time worker actually needs to live. That's one side of the ledger. Now here's the other. Walmart has in recent years raised its average hourly wage multiple times, sitting above the federal minimum in most markets, and has invested heavily in automation, self-checkout, robotic floor scanners, automated inventory systems, technology that doesn't just cut labor costs, but changes what jobs even exist inside the store. Supporters argue this is simply the brutal math of a low-margin business. At 2.5% profit, every extra dollar in labor cost has to be recovered somewhere, or the entire model collapses and the store closes, eliminating jobs entirely rather than underpaying them. Here's the tension neither side likes to admit out loud. Both arguments are mathematically true at the same time. Low wages genuinely strain workers and communities, and a 2.5% margin business genuinely cannot absorb wage increases without either raising prices, cutting jobs through automation, or shrinking its footprint. There's no version of this story where Walmart simply pays more without something else in the equation moving. This is exactly why automation isn't a side note, it's the pressure valve. Every self-checkout kiosk is Walmart quietly answering the wage question with technology instead of headcount. It's not evil and it's not generous. It's the same cold math from Section 3, applied to human labor instead of candles and t-shirts. When your margin is razor thin, every cost is a lever, and something always has to give. For investors, this matters more than the ethics debate alone. Wage pressure, minimum wage legislation, and automation costs directly affect Walmart's already thin margins. Meaning labor policy isn't just a moral question, it's a line item that can make or break earnings reports for years to come. But wages and automation aren't the only battlefield reshaping Walmart's future. There's a much bigger war happening, one against a competitor that doesn't operate stores at all, and it's forcing Walmart to reinvent itself in real time. For years, the narrative was simple. Amazon was going to kill Walmart. A company with no physical stores, unlimited digital shelf space, and same-day delivery ambitions looked unstoppable against a retailer built on parking lots and cash registers. Analysts predicted Walmart would become the next Sears, a giant too slow to adapt, watching its customers disappear into a browser tab. That's not what happened. Instead, Walmart did something almost nobody expected. It turned its biggest weakness, thousands of physical stores, into its sharpest weapon against Amazon. Here's the what moment most people miss entirely. Amazon's genius was building warehouses close to customers. Walmart already had something better. Nearly 700 stores within 10 miles of roughly 90% of the US population, functioning as instant micro-warehouses that didn't need to be built. They already existed, so Walmart flipped the model. Instead of shipping products from distant fulfillment centers, it turned existing stores into same-day delivery and pickup hubs. Order groceries online, and there's a real chance they're picked directly off the shelf of your neighborhood Walmart within the hour, not shipped from 3 states away. The result? Walmart now fulfills a staggering share of same-day online grocery orders in the US, a category where its physical footprint gives it a genuine edge. Amazon has spent billions trying to replicate with warehouses it still has to build from scratch. This is contrast framing at its sharpest. Amazon bet on infrastructure built for speed. Walmart bet on infrastructure already built for presence and repurposed it for speed. Two completely different paths to the same finish line. Walmart also launched Walmart Plus, a direct answer to Amazon Prime, bundling delivery, fuel discounts, and streaming perks. It's not winning the subscription war outright. Amazon's ecosystem is still larger, but it doesn't need to win outright. It just needs to stay close enough that Walmart's core advantage, that razor-thin margin, massive volume machine from Section 3, keeps generating enough cash to keep evolving. This is the real lesson hiding inside the Walmart-Amazon rivalry. Dominance in modern retail isn't about picking one strategy and defending it forever. It's about which company can keep re-engineering its own advantages faster than the other side can copy them. And once you understand that, you're finally ready for the question this entire video has been building toward. What does any of this actually mean for your money? Let's make this personal. Say you've got money to invest and you're staring at two options. Walmart stock, trading like the world's most boring blue chip, or a flashy direct-to-consumer brand with gorgeous margins, and a founder who's all over social media. Which one do you pick? Most retail investors, without thinking twice, pick the exciting one. High margins feel like quality. A 20% margin sounds like a company printing money, while Walmart's 2.5% sounds like a company barely scraping by. That instinct is exactly the trap this entire video has been dismantling. Here's the filter you now have that most investors don't. Margin alone tells you almost nothing. What actually matters is margin combined with volume, and volume combined with the infrastructure required to defend it. That flashy DTC brand with juicy margins. If it doesn't own its supply chain, doesn't have logistics leverage, and depends on paid ads to acquire every single customer, its margin can evaporate overnight the moment a bigger player enters the space or ad costs spike. Walmart's moat isn't its margin, it's that almost nobody can replicate the volume and logistics machine required to make a thin margin profitable at all. So the real question to ask isn't how much does this company make per sale? It's could a well-funded competitor recreate this entire system in 5 years? For Walmart, the honest answer is still no. Not because of the brand, but because of the physical and logistical infrastructure built over decades. For most high-margin startups, the honest answer is uncomfortably close to yes. This same filter applies far beyond Walmart. Costco, grocery chains, even airlines. Any business you're tempted to dismiss as boring because the margins look thin deserves a second look through this exact lens. What's the volume and what's protecting it? And as a shopper, this changes something too. That $4 detergent bottle isn't cheap because Walmart doesn't care about profit. It's cheap because an entire system, decades in the making, was engineered so a razor-thin margin could still generate billions. You're not getting a discount. You're witnessing the output of one of the most sophisticated logistics operations ever built. You just never saw the machinery behind the price tag until now. Which brings us back to where this whole video started. Remember where we started. Walmart's revenue outpaces the GDP of entire nations, yet it survives on a margin so thin most businesses would consider it a warning sign, not a strategy. That paradox felt almost impossible to explain. It isn't anymore. Walmart isn't powerful despite its thin margins. It's powerful because of them, weaponized by a scale of volume, logistics, and supplier leverage that took decades to build and remains nearly impossible to copy. Dana's boutique candle shop, Marcus's discount store, the t-shirt's invisible journey from field to shelf, the wage debate forcing automation forward, the quiet war against Amazon. Every piece of this puzzle points to the same conclusion. Boring isn't the absence of ambition. Boring, done at Walmart's scale, is one of the most sophisticated economic machines on the planet. So here's your action step, the one thing to carry with you long after this video ends. The next time you dismiss a company, or a career path, or a business idea as boring, because the margins look unimpressive, stop and ask the real question. What's the volume? What's protecting it? Because that's where the actual story lives. Hiding in plain sight behind every price tag, every paycheck, every obviously safe investment you've ever overlooked. The companies that quietly reshape economies are rarely the loudest ones in the room. They're the ones that mastered the math nobody else bothered to check. And once you start looking for that math everywhere else, in the stocks you own, the businesses you admire, the safe choices you've never questioned, you'll never see boring the same way again.